Okay, I will now call this meeting to order. Good morning, everyone. My name is Christian Lotta, CPA, President of the California Board of Accountancy. Welcome to our May 14th, 2026 CBA meeting. The CBA welcomes and encourages public participation throughout the meeting. Members of the public have an opportunity to provide comment in person or via the WebEx platform. Instructions on how to make a public comment will be provided whenever a comment period is open. You will be allotted up to 5 minutes for public comment. Ms. Reed, please establish a quorum.
Doug Aguilera,
Present.
Patricia Batchelor,
Here.
Nancy Corrigan,
Nancy Corrigan, present.
Nancy Dong,
Here.
Yanita Guzman, Carrie Ann Farrell Hines, Christian Lotta,
Present.
Tony Lynn,
Here.
Bruce Rafel,
Here.
and Joe Rosenbaum.
Here.
We have a quorum. Abigail Zielinski,
I'm also here.
and we have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. Of course, we can't forget about Ms. Zielinski. All right, so now I will read our mission statement into the record. The CBA's mission is to protect consumers by ensuring only qualified licensees practice public accountancy in accordance with established professional standards. This mission is derived from the statutory requirement that protection of the public shall be the highest priority for the California Board of Accountancy in exercising its licensing, regulatory, and disciplinary functions. Whenever the protection of the public is inconsistent with other interests sought to be promoted, the protection of the public shall be paramount. Okay, so we go ahead and get started on agenda item 1, public comments for items not on the agenda. Are there any public comments here in Sacramento? Seeing none, moderator, please open WebEx for public comment.
This is the moderator for members of the public on WebEx. If you would like to make a public comment for items not on the agenda, please click the raised hand icon, or if you're an audio-only participant, you can raise your hand by pressing *3 on your device. All right, and it appears there are no requests for public comment at this time.
Thank you, moderator. Okay, moving on to agenda item 2. And we'll start with 2A, which is our discussion and update regarding the California Board of Accountancy's 125th anniversary activities. Starting with the March meeting, we launched a standing agenda item to recognize activities celebrating the CBA's 125th anniversary. Today's update covers the activities that have occurred since that meeting, marking this important milestone. On the CBA's actual anniversary date of March 23rd, we released a video that included birthday greetings from a variety of well-wishers, including State Treasurer Fiona Ma, CPA, State Senator Roger Nilo, CPA, several former CBA presidents, the former and current director of the Department of Consumer Affairs, representatives from the California Society of CPAs, and I also shared my congratulations on all the CBA has accomplished. On that day, staff launched Anniversary Fun Facts, a new weekly feature on social media to share interesting facts about CBA history. Every Monday, these tidbits are presented in a specially designed graphic format to draw attention to the posts. Also on March 23rd, the CBA issued a press release to recognize its celebration of 125 years of protecting consumers in California, which was distributed to the media and interested parties throughout the state. And in case you were wondering, yes, there was cake. CBA staff gathered for an informal celebration of the anniversary during the lunch hour that week, sharing stories, snacks, and of course, a piece of birthday cake. The CBA now has a webpage dedicated to our 125th anniversary. It is a central location for us to showcase highlights from our celebration. Everything I've mentioned here and more can be found on the page, and I encourage you to take a look by clicking on the newly designed carousel image on the top of the CBA website's homepage. Later this month, we will be releasing a video that will highlight the CBA's role in ensuring consumer protection and the importance of the accounting profession to the state's economy and business community. We would like to thank Cal CPA for their assistance in helping us find accounting firm locations to film for the video. Update 109 will be out later this month, and it will feature a special anniversary section. Included will be anniversary items. Among them will be the first of 3 articles on the 125-year history of the CBA, covering the period of 1901 to 1945, as well as a timeline of milestones from those early years of the board. There will be other items, including a map of the 1906 San Francisco fires and where the board's office was in comparison, and the text of the original law establishing the board in 1901. It should be a fascinating read for anyone interested in the history to see how it all began for the CBA. I enjoyed participating in some of these events so far, and I'm looking forward to updating you again in July on the ongoing celebrations of the CBA and accounting's profession's 125th anniversary. Additionally, we do have our Senate resolution here that is framed. And so if you want to take a closer look at that, we'll have it sitting in the back of the room. Thank you, Ms. Pierce. Okay, do we have any member comments on this agenda item? Ms. Hines?
I feel like we should get cake at our July meeting.
I approve.
No,
I-
cake
I
and
second
candy are
that.
different.
Anyone move to approve the cake? We got it.
I'll see what I can do.
Thank you, Ms. Hines. Any other member comments? Okay, seeing none. Any public comments here in Sacramento on this agenda item? Seeing none, moderator, please open WebEx for public comment on agenda item 2A.
This is the moderator. We currently do not have any public on the WebEx at this time.
Thank you. Okay, we will be moving on to agenda items 2B and 2C, which are resolutions for retired peer review oversight committee member Fausto Hinojosa, CPA, and qualifications committee member Sarah Herrera, CPA. Can I get a motion to the resolutions? Thank you, Mr. Rafel. Do I have a second? Ms. Zielinski, thank you. Okay, any member comments on this item? Seeing none, any public comment here in Sacramento on agenda items 2B and C? Seeing none, moderator, are there any public comments on WebEx for this item?
This is the moderator. Appears there are no public available on WebEx at this time.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Ms. Reed, please take the vote.
Member Aguilar,
Yes.
member Batchelor, member Corrigan,
Yes.
member Dong,
Yes.
member Guzman,
Yes.
member Hines, member Lotta,
Yes.
member Lynn,
Yes.
member Rayful,
Yes.
member Rosenbaum,
Yes.
and member Zielinski.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Thank you. Okay, we will be moving on to agenda item D, which is just a written report only, so you can review that in your materials. And the next, we will move on to agenda item E, which is the Department of Consumer Affairs Director's Report on Departmental Activities, and that presentation will be given via WebEx by Arthur Babakanyan, Research Data Supervisor, Organizational Improvement Office, Department of Consumer Affairs. Please proceed.
Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning, board members and staff. My name is Arthur Babakanyan from the California Department of Consumer Affairs. Thank you for the opportunity to provide an update from the department. I would like to start with the annual Form 700. DCA would like to thank board members for completing the annual Form 700 submission, which were due on April 1st. As a reminder, all new board members must fill a Form 700 with the Fair Political Practice Commission 30 days after their appointment and annually on April 1st for every year thereafter. Additionally, board members must file a Form 700 leaving office statement within 30 days of leaving the board. We appreciate board members' commitment to this important disclosure that provides transparency and accountability to the public. And then I'd like to move on to the Enforcement Academy. We are excited to share that this spring, DCA relaunched the Enforcement Academy training program, which had not been held since the COVID-19 pandemic. This 4-day training program offered DCA board and bureau enforcement staff an overview of the enforcement process, investigations, complaint intake, and formal discipline, as well as learn best practices and make connections with other programs. Our March session included staff participation from over 20 different boards and bureaus, and we are planning additional academies in August and October of 2026. And then moving forward to DEI Executive Steering Committee and Subcommittee. DCA's Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Accessibility Executive Steering Committee recently selected 15 employees from throughout DCA to participate as members of the inaugural DEI subcommittee. This subcommittee will meet bi-monthly to develop and implement multiple initiatives and goals to promote positive organizational impact. The first meeting of the subcommittee is scheduled for July 31st, 2026, and we will be continuing to highlight their milestones and accomplishments. And then moving on to Governor's Reorganization Plan. We also wanted to remind members about the upcoming reorganization of the DCA's Oversight Agency. On July 1st, the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency will be split into two new separate entities, the California Housing and Homelessness Agency and the Business and Consumer Services Agency. The new Business and Consumer Services Agency will be responsible for consumer affairs, licensing and enforcement, and the Department of Consumer Affairs, which will be among the 8 departments. DCA continues to participate in multiple work groups on the logistics required to transition to new agency and will continue to keep board leadership apprised. And then moving on to board member orientation. This is the 2026 training date. So DCA's board member orientation training, also known as BMOT, is an all-day virtual training that must be completed by members within 1 year of appointment and reappointment to your board. We held our first session of the year in April, and we look forward to connecting with everyone for the next BMOT sessions taking place on June 24th and October 21st. So please register for the first available date using DCA's Learning Management System, or LMS, to be in compliance. If you need assistance accessing these trainings or unsure about whether you are in compliance, please contact us at memberrelations@dca.ca.gov. And then lastly, for members who are serving in their grace period and are interested in continuing their service on the board, please reach out to Member Relations. We are grateful for dedication to public service and are happy to work with you to relay your interest in your appointing authority. And that will conclude the DCA updates. Thank you, and I'm available if there is any questions.
Thank you for your presentation. Members, do we have any questions or comments on this agenda item? Mr. Rafel?
Thank you for your presentation. I have a question on your in the paragraph about DEI Executive Steering Committee and Subcommittee. Has DCA received any pushback from individuals or organizations that object to the term DEI?
I'll take that question back to my management team and we could discuss and come back with a response to that.
If you could respond back to the staff and those staff will pass it out. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any additional board member comments or questions? Seeing none, any public comment here in Sacramento on this item? And seeing none, I will proceed with public comment just taking here in Sacramento, as there are currently no members of the public online. And if that changes, staff will inform me, and then we will proceed to continue to take public comment on WebEx. Okay, so that concludes our agenda item 2E. And we are now on agenda item 3, which is the report of the Vice President. So I'll hand it over to Mr. Aguilera.
Thank you, President Lotta. This first item is to recommend the reappointment of Laura L. Ross, CPA, to the Enforcement Advisory Committee. The Enforcement Advisory Committee assists the CBA in advisory capacity with enforcement activities. This includes reviewing closed investigation files, providing technical guidance on open investigations, and participating in investigative hearings. I've conferred with the CBA Executive Officer to verify that Ms. Ross has met the appropriate requirements for license renewal and have demonstrated the skills and knowledge to serve as a member on the Enforcement Advisory Committee. I would like to make a motion to reappoint Laura L. Ross, CPA, to the Enforcement Advisory Committee effective through May 31st, 2028. And I'll turn it back to President Lotta to ask for a second.
Thank you, Vice President Aguilera. Do I have a second? Mr. Rafel. Thank you. Any additional member comments or questions on this item? Seeing none, any public comment here in Sacramento? Seeing none, we'll proceed to the vote. Ms. Reed.
Member Zelinski,
Yes.
Member Rosenbaum,
Yes.
Member Rayful,
Yes.
Member Lynn,
Yes.
Member Lotta,
Yes.
Member Hines, Member Guzman,
Yes.
Member Dong,
Yes.
Member Corrigan,
Yes.
Member Batchelor,
Yes.
and Member Aguilera.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Thank you. Please proceed, Mr. Aguilera.
We had an unusual situation where the chair of the Peer Review Oversight Committee needed to resign due to a heavy workload. And so to ensure that there's full leadership for the committee, this item is to recommend Nick Peterson, CPA, be appointed as chair, and Jennifer E. Benjamin be appointed as vice chair of the Peer Review Oversight Committee. The Peer Review Oversight Committee assists the CBA in an advisory capacity in its oversight of the peer review program. As with all appointments, I have verified that the individuals have met the requirements for license renewal and have demonstrated the skills and knowledge to continue to serve in a leadership capacity on the Peer Review Oversight Committee. I would like to make a motion to appoint Nick Peterson, CPA, as chair and Jennifer E. Benjamin, CPA, as vice chair of the Peer Review Oversight Committee effective through December 31st, 2026. And with that, I'll turn it back over to President Lotta to ask for a second.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Mr. Rafel again. I'll hit the second. Thank you. Any additional board member comments or questions? Seeing none, any public comment here in Sacramento? Seeing none, and there are no members of the public online, so Ms. Reed, please take the vote.
Member Aguilera,
Yes.
Member Batchelor,
Yes.
Member Corrigan, Member Dong,
Yes.
Member Guzman, Member Hines, Member Lotta,
Yes.
Member Lynn,
Yes.
Member Rayful,
Yes.
Member Rosenbaum,
Yes.
and Member Zelinski.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Thank you. Please continue, Vice President Aguilera. Actually, we don't have any reappointments or appointments for the Qualifications Committee. So that concludes our Vice President's report. Thank you. So now we will be moving on to agenda item 4, which is our report of the Secretary Treasurer, and I pass it over to Secretary Treasurer Batchelor.
Thank you, President Lotta. I'm Patricia Batchelor, CPA, and today I will be providing a report, our third quarter financial report for fiscal years 2025 and 2026. Provided for your review, the CBA's budget authority remains at $20,026,000, reflecting a $157,000 decrease from the amount originally contained in the governor's budget due to statewide cost savings. The table on page 2 shows CBA revenues through March 31st, 2026. They totaled $17,823,651. And as of the third quarter, revenue is projected to exceed $22 million by fiscal year end. The expenditure table on page 3, that reflects actual expenditures as of March 31st, 2026, and page 4 provides a comparison of current and prior fiscal year spending, reflecting an overall 2% increase compared to the same period last fiscal year, I should say. Page 5 through 7 provide detailed explanations of each major expenditure line along with notable changes. Expenditures through the third quarter totaled $13.8 million, representing 69% of the annual budget. Based on current spending patterns, the CBA remains on track to finish the fiscal year with a 4.9% budget surplus. Finally, the fund balance analysis on page 9, that reflects CBA is projected to end fiscal year 2025 and 2026 with 15.3 months in reserve. This reflects increased revenue from the fee adjustments that took effect July 1st, 2024, as well as projected revenue for a second step of the fee increase scheduled for July 1st, 2026. This concludes my presentation of the Secretary Treasurer Report. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, and staff is available to answer any questions also. And I'm turning it back to President Lotta.
Thank you, Secretary Treasurer Batchelor. Do we have any member comments or questions on the Secretary Treasurer Report? Okay, seeing none, any public comments here in Sacramento on this item? Seeing none, and since there are no members of the public online, we can go ahead and move on to our next item, which is the report of the executive officer, and we'll be starting with 5A, the administration activity report, which will be presented by Christy Abate, manager of the administration division.
Good morning. It's still morning, right? For a few more minutes. Good morning, President Lotta and members of the board. My name is Christy Abate. I'm the manager of the Administration Services Unit, and I will present the Administration Activity Report for you today. In alignment with DCA's Illness and Injury Prevention Plan, the CBA continues to implement activities that promote a safe and secure workplace. As part of these efforts, Administration Chief Deanne Pierce and I completed a CHP site vulnerability assessment on March 18th. The assessment involved a walkthrough of the Venture Oaks office with a CHP officer, covering the third floor suite, the fourth floor meeting space, and the exterior perimeter of the building. Following the assessment, the officer recommended additional security enhancements, including installing cameras in public-facing areas. To further strengthen workplace preparedness, the CBA hosted a mandatory workplace safety and active shooter preparedness training on April 23rd. The training was presented by CHP Safety Services Program Officer Lucas Etchell, who provided staff guidance on recognizing potential threats, responding to unsafe conditions, and understanding individual responsibilities and maintaining a safe work environment. Transitioning from safety initiatives to business modernization, staff continues to advance several key components of the CBA's business modernization project, with a strong emphasis on expanding automation to support both internal operations and external stakeholders. One major initiative underway is enhancing CE audits following the transition to CE self-certification. These audits incorporate risk-based selections, which Ms. O'Connor will discuss further during the enforcement activity report. The expansion of CE audits is progressing in 2 phases. First, improving existing audit procedures, and second, integrating an internal application that will interact with CBA Connect to automate functions and increase audit capacity. In addition to CE audit modernization, staff is collaborating with IT to implement Assembly Bill 1175, which requires the development of an online portal for colleges to submit degree and certificate recognition applications. A testing environment is anticipated for summer 2026, with the portal scheduled to launch by the end of the year. Collectively, these initiatives demonstrate significant progress toward modernization, efficient systems that strengthen the CBA's mission and enhance services to stakeholders. That concludes my presentation on this agenda item. I'll now turn it back over to President Lada, and I'm happy to answer any questions the members may have.
Thank you, Ms. Abate. Members, do we have any questions or comments on this report? Seeing none, any public comments here in Sacramento on this report? Seeing none, and since there are no members of the public online, that concludes this agenda item. Thank you for your report. Next, we are on agenda item 5B, the Enforcement Activity Report, which will be presented by Corey Riordan, Deputy Chief of the Enforcement Division.
Thank you, President Lada, and good morning, CBA members. As Ms. Lada said, my name is Corey Riordan. I'm the Deputy Chief of the Enforcement Division. The activity report before members today covers the first 9 months of fiscal year 2025-26. Starting on page 1, the CBA has received nearly 2,000 complaints. The graph on the bottom of page 1 provides a comparison of the total complaints received as of the same reporting period in the 2 prior fiscal years. On page 2, we've included data on the top 3 complaint types, with complaints regarding renewal deficiencies related to continuing education being the top complaint. Moving on to investigations and investigations pending on page 3, the CBA has closed nearly 1,900 cases, with 97% closed within the first year. The average days to close investigations was 74 days. As of March 31st, enforcement has had 571 cases in its pending investigations inventory. And since March 31st, 1 case over 24 months has been closed, 2 were referred to the AG's office, and 3 remain under active investigation. Discipline-related information can be found on page 4 of the report. Looking first at AG referrals, the CBA received 19, the CBA referred 19 matters to the AG and filed 17 pleadings. The CBA had 24 matters pending at the AG's office. And lastly, the CBA took action on 19 final disciplinary orders. Moving on to citations on page 5, the CBA issued over 800 citations. 96% of the citations were due to failing to comply with the 2012 continuing education requirement. And the CBA has withdrawn or modified 69 citations. In most cases, the licensee either provided new mitigating evidence or complied with the issue that resulted in the issuance of the citation. Page 6 contains information regarding unlicensed activity. The CBA received 89 complaints regarding unlicensed activity, and we've closed 114 investigations during the first 9 months of the fiscal year. Moving on to page 7, related to the CBA license renewal compliance program. As mentioned in the administrative activity report, the CBA expanded its audits of renewal applications to ensure compliance with the CE requirements. The new compliance audit program incorporates both an increase in the number of randomly selected applications and targeted risk-based scenarios. Audits are conducted by both the Enforcement Division and the Licensing Division. The Enforcement Division focuses on the risk-based scenarios, including licensees previously issued a citation and fine for a 2012 violation, licensees on probation, and those who renewed late. The Enforcement Division began selecting renewal applications for audit using the risk-based scenarios in March, and as of March 31st, 270 applications were selected for audit. Of the 270, 74 audits were found compliant and 17 were determined to be deficient. The final area of the report I'd like to highlight is on page 8 and is related to probation monitoring. As of March 31st, we had 48 licensees on probation with 1 new probationer since the last report. We identified 23 probation violations, with the majority being failure to submit written quarterly reports. That concludes my presentation on the enforcement activity report, and I'd like to turn the discussion over to President Lotta and would be happy to answer any questions members may have.
Thank you, Ms. Riordan. Do we have any board member comments? Ms. Guzman?
Yes, can you please remind me the difference between internal and external complaints? Like who's making the internal complaints and who are the external folks?
Yes, internal complaints can be ones that were generated related to another enforcement matter. So within the enforcement division, we can be researching something and find a complaint related to a different matter that needs to be handled. And they can also come from our licensing division, and those would be the renewal applications that have deficiencies, or if there was something in initial licensing that was determined needed to be referred over.
Okay, and then external is the consumer or the public?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And that would include other governmental agencies, other state boards as well.
Mr. Rafel?
Thank you. At the risk of boring my colleagues, this is just to refresh my memory. It seemed to me from your report that the bulk of the citations come from people who haven't done their CE in an appropriate time. Would that be true?
Yes, that is correct.
Do you, is there a mechanism that CBA uses to notify licensees that towards the end of the time period, we don't have any record of you submitting the appropriate number of hours, so you better do it before the period expires?
So most of the citations are related to completing 20 hours.
Right.
And typically in the first year of their renewal period. We've done outreach to licensees regarding that matter, but it is up to the licensee to ensure that they meet the requirement.
Right. But you know who the licensees are doing it in their first year. You don't send them a notice out. You don't send specific individuals.
No, not at this
You know,
point.
this is, you're coming to the end of your first year. Please make sure you've done the appropriate coursework. We don't send that out.
No, not at this time.
Okay, thanks.
Ms. Pierce, did you have something to add?
Yeah, we do send an email notification. Well, we send a postcard when it's time for license renewal, and then they also get an email notification for renewal, the forthcoming renewal. But we don't have I think what you're looking for is that interim, like you're getting close to the end of your first year, those kind of things. But that is something that we have talked about as part of the strategic plan in terms of having more direct communication with the licensees. I think there was actually some preliminary work that was done by staff on David, you may have to jump in, but like 3 or 4 months before the end of their first year, like, hey, just a reminder, you need to do 20 with 12 in the subject matter. So it's not something that we haven't explored before. It's something that we have talked about doing, and it's part of the strategic plan tied in with that. And so it's not implemented yet, but it's something we're working on.
Ms. Corrigan?
You and thank you for that report. I just have a question then regarding, like on page 7 of 8, and regarding that defined risk-based criteria. And I understand about those with, previous issues that, it's a good idea to kind of check on where they are, late renewals and that sort of thing as potential risk. What about firms or individuals that are in specific practice areas like Yellow Book or ERISA plans or something like that? Or is it even possible to identify those rather than relying maybe on the random sampling? Increased random sampling would identify more of those because they would automatically fall into the population of possibly being selected. But what about high-risk practice areas in firms or with individuals? Thank you.
Hi, this is Michelle Center. You're jumping ahead a little bit.
So we will be providing our licensing activity report in a second. And we also have added some risk-based type of sampling, and that will include things like if you're subject to governmental auditing, which gets you to something you mentioned, or ANA, or maybe you are subject to having to do a peer review. So those kinds of things that are not specifically related to an enforcement action are the type of risk-based sampling that we will be doing in licensing.
I have a quick question. Is sampling just focused on individual license renewals, or does that also include firms as well?
So we have not historically done audits of firm renewals, but we have already started those discussions and making a list of the type of activities that we could audit on. For example, you said you had a clear peer review report on such and such a date. Part of our audit could be something along that line. Since we're not actually going to be looking at continuing education for a firm, there are other things that we could look at. So we are exploring that option right now.
And just for my clarification, what does a firm license renewal entail? Like, what are the requirements for that?
It would include things like updating us on who your director is, making sure that we have the most recent, I can't remember what that document's called. Shareholders and partners. One of the primary things, though, is reporting on your peer review if you're subject to peer review.
Okay, so that's set up very differently than the individual license renewal. Okay,
Yes.
that makes sense. Thank you. Vice President Aguilera.
A question on the compliance audit, same thing. So I think in January, starting January, you no longer had to turn in your CE, your list of CE. You just had to verify that you completed it. And then I think this is the results of then the group doing targeted searches for high risk renewals. Is that what's in place now, and this is the results of that process?
Correct. The Enforcement Division did not do audits previous to this time. And so then the March data is for those that renewed in January and February.
Okay. And then the deficiency rate, 19% or 1 in 5, I'm thinking that's kind of high, but I'm also thinking that maybe that's because of the targeted effort. Like if we're going to target, then more likely than not, there's going to be a deficiency. Is that what's happening?
I don't think we would be able to speak to the trends at this point, but the current audits that we have done are on these risk-based people who've had the previous 20 and 12, and they would be deficient if they had another 20 and 12 that was on there. That would be one reason they were deficient.
Thank you.
Ms. Pierce?
I just want to add in that I believe also in that deficient group is those who haven't responded. So if you didn't respond, you're marked as deficient. So that may be contributing to that percentage. And so it may not be that all of those that are deficient are lacking the CE. It could be that a portion of those are just they failed to respond. So.
Thank you. Any additional member comments or questions? Ms. Dong?
In terms of overall numbers, it looks like the number of complaints has fallen quite significantly. If I were to understand page 1, where it says the year-to-date numbers, first quarter, we're around half of where we were last year, and last year was a little bit lower from the year before. Do we have a sense of why that's happening? Do we think it's temporary, et cetera?
The internal complaints have remained pretty steady. The number of external complaints are as I mentioned previously, from other individuals, consumers, or other governmental agencies, and it is difficult to predict when those numbers may increase or decrease.
Is there a longer term trend where we've seen external complaints sort of fall off in years prior to 2023 and 24?
I would say, just to add a little more information that might answer your question. In previous fiscal years, we experienced a trend in a specific type of complaint. And since, as you can see from the numbers, that trend has kind of fallen off and we've obtained compliance from licensees that were having that particular issue. So that is one of the reasons, but the trends are unpredictable. I would say where we're at now is where we were historically prior to experiencing that trend.
So we're just regressing to the mean then over a longer term trend.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional comments or questions? I had one final, just to circle back to the discussion regarding the 2012 reminders. That seems, in my mind, like a heavy lift, considering we have about 116,000 licensees. I don't know of that which are individuals. Is that something that can be automated? Because I know that licenses renew every month based on a particular licensee's birthday. Like, could an automation happen with that? Is that kind of the direction you were thinking?
Yes, we're trying to see if, yeah. I mean, there's kind of two paths. One is seeing if we can leverage our current Connect system to do that interim, kind of that halfway mark, email, and then the other is a little bit more manual based. Not that we're sending out individually, a lot of emails, but it's pulling a list of people who expire in a particular month, or we actually talked about maybe grouping a couple months together. So we were sending out a reminder for those who were, 14 and 15 months out or something like that. Still automating that, but through our listserv email system, but definitely more labor intensive on that part of it. So it's our point in time email system or project, and it's part of our strategic plan. So there has been thought put into it. We just haven't executed quite yet.
Okay, that's great. I think this would be good for the licensees. It is still their responsibility to keep up with these requirements, but it's such a high proportion of our violations that I think we should try to address that. And, that would free up time for staff to focus on more severe violations versus these kind of compliance-based ones. So I think that'd be great to get the ball rolling on. Thank you. Any additional member comments and questions on this item? Seeing none. Any public comment here in Sacramento? Seeing none. Moderator, do we still have no members of the public online?
This is the moderator. We do have members of the public on WebEx. For our members of the public on WebEx, if you would like to make a public comment on this item, please click that raised hand icon. Or if you're an audio only participant, you can raise your hand by pressing *3 on your device. All right, and it appears there are no requests for public comment at this time.
Thank you. Please close public comment. Thank you for your presentation. That concludes item 5B. So we will be moving on to agenda item 5C, the licensing activity report, which will be provided by Patty Ritter, manager of the licensing division. Please proceed.
Thank you, President Latta. I am Patricia Ritter, and I am the Examination Unit Manager under the Licensing Division. The Licensing Activity Report, or the LAR, covers July 1st, 2025 through March 31st, 2026. The LAR begins with the reporting of processing times. Once again, I am pleased to report that processing times remain below 30 days. The licensing division received approximately 20,000 telephone inquiries and slightly more than 49,000 email inquiries. That is a total of more than 69,500 inquiries. Table 3 shows the CBA approved 5,055 first-time applicants to sit for the CPA exam. This total includes 1,019 early entry applicants and 4,036 non-early entry applicants. On Table 4, this shows the CBA approved over 2,700 applications for new CPA and firm licenses. Table 5 shows the CBA processed over 37,000 license or registration renewals. Table 6 displays the renewal unit compliance audit data, which includes risk-based and sampling audits performed by the licensing division staff. As Corey mentioned, the enforcement division is also performing risk-based audits. This table includes the same information as the audit table and the enforcement activity report, but it is a different subset of CPAs. Similar to how enforcement is doing risk-based audits, we are also focusing a portion of our audits on risk-based factors such as new licensees and licensees subject to accounting and auditing, government or preparation engagement, continuing education. Of the 857 audits performed this fiscal year, 586 were found to be compliant and 157 were found to be deficient. This accounts for a deficiency rate of 21%. As shown in Table 7, the current licensing population is 116,174. That includes 67,660 active CPAs and 7,060 active firms. Table 8 and Table 9 show statistics related to military and refugee applications. To summarize, the CBA answered more than 550 inquiries, and average processing times remain at around 8 days. That concludes my presentation, and I will now turn it back over to President Lotta, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Ritter. Any member comments or questions? Mr. Rafel?
I just have a quick question, which I think I know the answer to. If you reference here refugees, you don't have to be a U.S. citizen to get a license. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Any additional member comments or questions? I have just a suggestion on the presentation of the tables in this report. I noticed that we have just the current year activity so far from July to March, and it's compared to the 2 prior fiscal years. For me, I think it would be helpful to also see that same period for the 2 prior years, because it's a little bit difficult to gauge how to compare that, because we have a partial year comparing to whole years. So that's just a suggestion for future reports.
Thank you.
Any additional comments or questions from members? Okay, any public comments here in Sacramento? Seeing none, moderator, please open WebEx for public comment.
This is the moderator for members of the public on WebEx. If you would like to make a public comment on this item, please click the raised hand icon, or if you're an audio-only participant, you can raise your hand by pressing *3 on your device. All right, and it appears there are no requests for public comment at this time.
Thank you, moderator. That concludes our agenda item 5C. Next, we have item 5A, our outreach activity report, which will be provided by David Hemphill, our information and planning officer.
Good afternoon, President Lotta and members. I will be presenting the outreach activity report, item 5E. So next week marks the final scheduled stop for the 2025-26 CBA campus tour. We also had a virtual event scheduled with Irvine Valley College last week, but it had to be rescheduled due to last week's cyber attack, which affected so many colleges around the country, especially here in California. So that one's pending while we're figuring that out with them. But the main official final performance will be next Tuesday, May 19th on campus at UC Davis. Since our March meeting, the tour has appeared virtually with CSU Dominguez Hills, Fresno State University, Sacramento State University, UC Berkeley, and UC Santa Barbara. The campus tour also rocked in-person performances at CSU San Bernardino and UC Riverside, both as part of their spring banquet. At the San Bernardino event, CPA member Nancy J. Corrigan, CPA, headlined by discussing her career and the value of a CPA license. This marked the 6th consecutive year the CBA has teamed up with the university and their chapter of Beta Alpha Psi, and the 4th straight year Ms. Corrigan has presented at the event. Licensing staff was also present to answer students' questions, and transcript reviews were performed on site prior to the banquet and presentation. At the event held on campus at UC Riverside, President Christian Latta, CPA, gave our presentation. That marked President Latta's 5th event of this spring's campus tour. So we would like to extend our gratitude and acknowledge her hard work throughout the tour. We mentioned a national media article last time about Campus Tour, and I'm pleased to share that the Bloomberg tax piece was published in March. Campus Tour was prominently featured in the national story about how state boards are communicating the licensure requirement changes to students around the country. The reporter spoke very positively about our campaign and the impact it is having supporting California's future CPA candidates. It even featured some of our own graphics that staff created in the article. It was a very good look for the CBA. As the tour takes its final bow, the final numbers are still coming in, but we can say that this impactful outreach campaign reached more than 1,000 students statewide through events at over 30 colleges and universities, 12 in the fall, and that was not enough, so we did 18 in the spring. So I would like to personally thank every member who participated in the campus tour. You played a vital part in helping make it such a success. I'd also like to thank our outreach coordinator, Mick Murray, who's hanging out over there. Hey, Mick, for juggling all of these events that were all happening, felt like at the same time in various stages of planning. So he did a great job of keeping that organized. So we appreciate you, Mick. The response from the campus tour was unanimously positive. In the post-event survey that we solicited to these spring attendees, we asked whether they were glad that they attended campus tour. Out of the 139 respondents, 139 said yes, they were glad they attended. So we like that. 82% said they knew little to nothing about the requirements going in, and then 65% said they understood them really well after the conclusion of the event. So we like all that. A few specific comments that were made. It was super helpful and cleared a lot of questions up for me, and it was amazing, and I learned a lot. So very good. Students appreciated. That was really fun endeavor that we did. Last month, the CBA attended a senior resource fair on April 29th in Rancho Cordova, a suburb here in Sacramento. At this event, staff provided free information and resources for the well-being of the aging community. Another senior event, Recovery for All, Sacramento's Senior Health Fair, will be held next month on June 20th. Staff will be in attendance there and host a booth to provide resources like our Consumer Assistance Handbook and information about elder financial abuse. Moving on to multimedia, the CBA released an Accounting for California podcast episode that was filmed during our time at CSU East Bay in March, featuring CBA President Doug Aguilera, CPA, and CBA member Teresa N. Thompson, CPA, answering real-life questions about the accounting profession asked by 3 of their students there. The conversation should really resonate with those along their path to a career in accounting and has already been viewed several hundred times on YouTube. The CBA published a webpage with information about the new licensure requirement changes. A graphic in the homepage carousel links to the page, which includes details about the differences between the current requirements and the new enhanced requirements, visualized by a helpful infographic designed by staff. The page also includes a timeline for the changes and a countdown widget at the top of the page, which is counting down to January 1st, and it's currently ticking away at 231 days and some change. Another website update was made to the CBA fee restructuring page. So that page highlights the upcoming second step of the licensure and renewal fee increases that are kicking in on July 1st of this year. The page was also edited to reflect the 2.3% transaction fee that will be assessed to all license renewal fees paid by credit card. The webpage also provides background on the decision and explains the reasoning behind the transition of the fee to the user. President Latta gave a great update about the CBA's 125th anniversary celebration activity, so I won't rehash those elements, but I will mention that staff is hard at work on a new video that will commemorate the anniversary by telling the story of the importance of CPAs to the financial fabric of our society and championing, there we go, the role of the CBA in protecting consumers and maintaining the integrity of the profession. We can't wait for this to be seen, and it will be released in the next few weeks. Update issue 109 will be released by the end of this month. This edition includes a spotlight on the first era of the CBA's 125-year history, as President Latta mentioned, focusing on 1901 to 1945. Staff has had a lot of fun digging into the history, and we're excited to present it in a layout that will include an article and a timeline about those early 20th century years and other interesting images and graphics. There's a brief profile of John F. Forbes, CPA, who was an influential member of the accounting profession in those early years and the longest serving CBA president. Any guesses as to how long he served as president? Higher. Yeah, 31 years. So there you go. So Ms. Lata, if you'd like to serve into the 2050s, we'll see if we can rewrite the law for that. So yeah, an amazing individual from back then. So we learned a little bit about him. Other articles from Update will include details about CBA recognized degrees and certificates, an update on the AB 1175 regulations, peer review, and more. Moving on to social media engagement. Over the first quarter 2026, CBA platforms gained 631 new followers. Engagement on LinkedIn remained especially strong. Reactions over the past 30 days increased by 70%. Facebook also saw solid traction, with views over the past 30 days increasing by 53%. One of the best posts recently was our 125th birthday shout out video that garnered over 1,000 views on Instagram. Now, at the July meeting, staff are going to give a presentation regarding the CBA's social media strategy, some info about what all that means that I just told you, that'll kind of give you a little better understanding of our metrics and how we use them and what they indicate about our audience engagement and overall growth. So look forward to that in July. Lastly, one other thing we're doing on social media, we debuted on March 23rd, which was our actual birthday. We're calling it Anniversary Fun Facts. So we do that every Monday. We throw out a fun fact from our past and the research that we've done. So these include memorable milestones or firsts, other interesting historical tidbits. So they will continue weekly throughout 2026. So that includes my presentation on this agenda item. I'll turn it back to President Lata, but I'm always happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hemphill. I just want to extend our gratitude and congratulations from the board to the staff for this campus tour. Having just jumped in 5 times, I know how exhausting it is just from that. So, and you guys have done that way more times than I have. So thank you for your time traveling away from your families and, you know, you're pros at this campus tour by now, having done it so many times. And then I did also want to shout out Mr. Murray, who gave the presentation at UC Riverside at the banquet in Mr. Hemphill's absence. He did excellent, got lots of laughs from the students, and we actually had to cut our 1-hour presentation down to 30 minutes. So him and I both had to be really brief and to the point, and our presentation was received very well by the students and the faculty and the other professionals in the room. So yeah, I just wanted to give him a shout out. Ms. Corrigan.
To that shout out is he did an excellent job at San Bernardino State the previous evening. And so that went very well and it was very well attended. So thank you.
Mr. Rayful.
I wanted to second what President Lata said. I was able to attend the presentations both at Hayward and Northridge, and I thought they were terrific. It seemed to me that these were models of how state agencies ought to do outreach, and I'm wondering if you've received if you've advertised what you've done throughout the statewide government so that you could get some recognition either within the department or, you know, broader state government as to what you guys have done, because I think you really did a great job.
Thank you so much. I will say that DCA has always been very complimentary of everything that we do. And I don't want to speak up, speak for them, but as far as I know, a lot of their other boards kind of look to what we do as far as social media and outreach and things like that. I'm not sure about the rest of the state. If you want to put out some good words, I'm willing to share what we do with them. But yeah, thank you so much for the compliments.
I will add, Mr. Franzella and I shared on, I believe it was the NASBA Pacific Regional meeting, perhaps, and we shared about our campus tour, and the other leaders in other states were really impressed by that and wanted to model after it. So yeah, I think if we get the word out there, lots of other organizations could see the value, especially with how we interact with the students. Ms. Pierce?
I just wanted to add something on in response to Mr. Rafel. I was on a DCA meeting yesterday that had nothing to do with outreach. It was on personnel training or something. And they actually said, oh, CBA has a video on working at the CBA, which we did. And then somebody put in the chat that said, if you need any videos or outreach, ask the CBA, you know. And so anyway, I feel like the word is out amongst DCA and other boards. And so I thought that was a cool kudos, considering it was a meeting that had nothing to do with outreach. So.
And I'm just curious, Mr. Hemphill, was it your idea, the campus tour theme, or was it a group effort?
It was my idea, my radio background. I'm always thinking about music and things like that. But I will say, I mean, absolutely, without the entire team doing all of their efforts, I mean, I just had the idea. They put it into fruition and everything. So it was a fun thing.
Excellent. Any other board member? Oh, Ms. Dong.
Yeah, I agree that the campus tours have been wonderful from those that I've witnessed. And I think that the outreach to students in terms of increasing our pipeline of students who are taking the exam is worth the efforts. I'm wondering if there has been any thought or work around advocacy efforts to small businesses. So, you know, there are lots of small businesses in California who may or may not know how to vet a CPA, how to hire a CPA, what are some of the criteria to look for CPAs, and if they have problems with their CPAs, how to go about the complaints process. Have we reached out to the SBA, the Small Business Administration, reached out to industry groups or restaurants, for instance, or other types of industries that may predominantly, you know, sort of potentially have owners who are not American born? You know, and so it's sort of reaching the immigrant population so that they understand how to find the right help in terms of accounting.
I really like that point. And what, as we kind of shift away from campus tour and looking, you know, can focus again on kind of some of the consumer based videos that the board has kind of recommended. So we have one of the ones that's coming up next will be more specific for unlicensed activity. That was some of the direction we got. But as we're thinking, we're also going to do a video because we have that consumer assistance handbook right on the website that deals heavily with how to select a CPA. So that's one of our videos kind of being planned, you know, in the future, is to kind of do a video about that. So I like that specific angle, maybe even, you know, I don't know if it's a separate video or just kind of within that same video for business owners who are, you know, needing to select a CPA. So I'll add that in as we continue to brainstorm that video that's coming soon.
I would suggest, you know, maybe targeting chambers of commerce across different parts of California, certainly industry groups, and, you know, sort of think a little bit more about the language barrier here. Is there a way that we can put these videos for small business owners in their language?
Yes.
Understand that there's a cost and time associated with that, but you know, it is important that they're also receiving quality help and that they know what to look for in expert consulting services when it comes to filing their tax returns or doing financial planning. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for that suggestion.
Vice President Aguilera?
Yeah, a brief anecdote. I was at my aunt's 95th birthday party, and my niece, I got to talking to her, and she was explaining all of this accounting work, this really technical accounting work she does inside of a corporation. And so I asked her, "Are you a CPA?" And she said, "No, but you know, they changed the education requirements." And she's not in Cal CPA or anything like that. And so I've always wanted my CPA, so I'm going to go ahead and apply and take the test. So warm my heart.
All right.
Thank you. I did just want to add, I know we've talked about outreach for firms loosely, I'll say we haven't had a concrete strategy on that yet. And since we're rolling off of the campus tours, where's our next direction? What's the next focus? And have we made any progress on what we want to do with firm communications?
So we did that accounting in action licensee webinar in January. That was the first one. So the next one, I think Ms. Pierce mentioned it, we have one coming up in July, and that is going to be, kind of targeting firms. So to make sure that they understand, the changes in licensure requirements and things like that. So it'll still be for all licensees, but it'll be kind of really geared towards firms. So that'll be the next one. And then with another one coming up probably in November.
Okay, sounds good. I would, I don't know if the idea of a firm tour would be receptive on either end. I don't know, but that could be something on a smaller scale maybe we could think about. Okay, any additional member comments or questions on the outreach? Oh, Ms. Hines.
Isn't this all part of our strategic plan? Like there's a portion of our strategic plan that's all about the outreach. So, just a reminder, like tying it in, like check, we've done this part of the, outreach, the adopted strategic plan outreach, and now we're moving on to the next, or here are some of the others that, are on deck that we still have to accomplish.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Hines. That's a great suggestion. Do we have plans to do an update on the strategic plan, like a summary and status of where we are later this year?
Yeah.
November, I believe, is.
Yes, we typically do it in November.
Okay.
Kind of give an update on the progress that we've made, plans that we have upcoming. So we'll have a status on that. We've also been incorporating into our agenda items. Anytime we are bringing a topic forward that touches on the strategic plan, we've been incorporating that particular strategic plan goal and objective in there so that members know that, we're making progress. So that's kind of our, on the way, before we get to the annual update, just to kind of keep members apprised as well.
Thank you. Secretary Treasurer Batchelor.
Thank you, President Lotta. I wanted to know about another course in terms of the financial abuse with seniors. I've run up on that a few times and I've seen it for myself. And I found myself not knowing exactly what to do, in terms of especially if a senior has some type of brain deficiency like Alzheimer's or dementia, and they're being taken advantage of. So, but my point is, I reached out to an attorney, an estate and trust attorney, to see how much could I say and reveal, to the families. And the attorney told me nothing. You have to, keep it quiet. And so I was wondering if it's a possibility you can give more information out to CPAs, that are licensed and they're practicing, in terms of what their role should be, especially if someone is having some type of medical situation. That would be.
We do have a webpage with some information, a lot of resources on that. And I believe we've had an update, we've had an article. It was probably last year, I think, that kind of alerted CPAs to kind of be aware, and you're kind of almost on the front lines for a lot of this. But I think we could probably, revisit that, have another update article soon, because sadly, it's something that appears to be growing.
Yeah, true, because some professions are mandated reporters, on some things. And I think if someone is impaired memory-wise and, have cognitive difficulties, some kind of mandate should be pressed upon us, in terms of the financial health of an individual. So just something to think about.
Thank you.
Okay, any additional member comments or questions? Seeing none, any public comments here in Sacramento on the outreach activity report? Seeing none, moderator, please open WebEx for public comment on the outreach activity report.
This is the moderator for members of the public on WebEx. If you would like to make a public comment on this item, please click the raised hand icon. Or if you're an audio only participant, you can raise your hand by pressing *3 on your device. All right, it appears there are no requests for public comment at this time.
Thank you, moderator. Okay, in interest of time, we were just going to pull forward item 6C, the Qualifications Committee report, which is going to be provided by Tim Jones via WebEx. He's our Vice Chair of the Qualifications Committee. Please proceed, Mr. Jones.
Good afternoon, President Lotta and members of the board. I am Tim Jones, Vice Chair of the CBA's Qualifications Committee. I'm pleased to be here and provide a report on the activities of the QC. As background, the QC is responsible for holding subcommittee meetings where we interview supervisors and applicants for licensure. Both Section 69 and personal appearance interviews are held at subcommittee meetings. Section 69 interviews occur when staff believe additional or clarifying information is needed from a California licensee who has signed a certificate of experience, or when a licensee fails to submit a certificate of experience or comply with the request for an explanation of experience. Personal appearance interviews are conducted when experience is obtained outside the United States, or when staff believe additional or clarifying information is needed about a certificate of experience signed by an out-of-state licensee. Lastly, QC members serve as ambassadors to the accounting profession by assisting the CBA on various projects. Now that I've provided that background, I'm going to report on the QC's recent and upcoming activities. Since March 2026, the QC has convened one subcommittee meeting. At that meeting, the subcommittee conducted a personal appearance interview for an applicant who gained experience in governmental accounting. Based on that interview, the QC recommended that applicant for licensure. The next QC subcommittee meeting will be held on June 24th, 2026. Moving on to ambassador activities. On April 3rd, 2026, I contributed to a focus group on continuing education requirements. The session centered on evaluating current standards and exploring potential refinements to reduce barriers in the continuing education requirements that do not directly relate to the CBA's consumer protection mandate. I'm also excited to report that I will be participating in the upcoming UC Davis campus tour on May 19th, 2026. That concludes my report. At this time, I will turn it back to President Lata and will be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Any member comments or questions on the presentation? Seeing none, any public comment here in Sacramento? Seeing none, moderator, please open WebEx for public comment.
This is the moderator. For members of the public on WebEx, if you would like to make a public comment on this item, please click the raise hand icon, or if you're an audio-only participant, you can raise your hand by pressing *3 on your device. All right, and it appears there are no requests for public comment at this time.
Thank you, moderator. Okay, thank you for your presentation, Mr. Jones. That concludes agenda item 6C. We will now be taking a break for lunch, and we will be resuming at 1:45. Okay, have a great lunch, everyone. Okay, welcome back. We will resume our meeting this afternoon with item 6, which is our report on the Enforcement Advisory Committee, the Peer Review Oversight Committee, and the Qualifications Committee. First of which is agenda item A, the Enforcement Advisory Committee report, which will be provided by Carrie O'Connor, our Enforcement Chief.
Thank you. I'll be providing 6A1 and 6A2 today, filling in for our chair, Ms. Benjamin. The EAC held its meeting in person last Thursday in San Diego. I'd like to thank CBA member Patricia Batchelor for providing the update on the CBA activities. At the meeting, members focused on reviewing 10 investigative files, and members provided very valuable insight and feedback to assist staff with the next steps in the investigation process for those files. We also conducted 3 investigative hearings, and our next meeting will be held on August 6th here at the CBA office. Next, I'll move on to 6A2, which is approval of the 2027 EAC meeting dates. EAC members approved the 2027 meeting dates last week at their meeting, and the EAC has selected those dates to avoid major and religious holidays. The EAC recommends that the CBA adopt or modify the proposed 2027 meeting dates. And that concludes my presentation. I'll now turn it back over to President Lotta, and I'm happy to answer any questions members may have.
Thank you, Ms. O'Connor. Do we have any board member questions or comments?
If you're open, I'm willing to move the,
That's exactly what I had next. Thank you, Mr. Rafel.
reading your lips. I move the item as distributed.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Mr. Aguilera? Thank you. Any additional member comments or questions? Seeing none, any public comment here in Sacramento? Seeing none, moderator, are there any members of the public online?
This is the moderator for members of the public on WebEx. If you would like to make a public comment on this item, please click the raise hand icon. Or if you're an audio only participant, you can raise your hand by pressing *3 on your device. All right, it appears there are no requests for public comment at this time.
Thank you, moderator. Ms. Reed, please take the vote.
Member Aguilera?
Yes.
Member Batchelor?
Yes.
Member Corrigan? Member Dong?
Yes.
Member Guzman?
Yes.
Member Hines? Yes. Member Lotta?
Yes.
Member Lynn?
Yes.
Member Rafel?
Yes.
Member Rosenbaum?
Yes.
Member Zelensky?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. Okay, we have no report on agenda item 6B, so we'll be moving forward to item 7, which is discussion and possible action on meeting minutes. This item is for the approval of the minutes. First, can I get a motion to adopt the minutes of the March 12th to 13th, 2026 California Board of Accountancy meeting, specifically agenda item 7A, which includes non-substantive edits that were noted after the materials were received?
I'll move approval as distributed.
Thank you, Mr. Rafel. Do I have a second? Ms. Hines. Thank you. Any additional member comments? Seeing none, any public comment here in Sacramento? Seeing none, moderator, please open WebEx for public comment.
This is the moderator. We have no requests for public comment on WebEx.
Thank you. Ms. Reed, please take the vote.
Member Zelensky?
Yes.
Member Rosenbaum?
Yes.
Member Rafel?
Yes.
Member Lynn?
Yes.
Member Lotta?
Yes.
Member Hines?
Yes.
Member Guzman?
Yes.
Member Dong?
Yes.
Member Corrigan?
Yes.
Member Batchelor?
Yes.
And Member Aguilera?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. Now, can I please get a motion to accept the committee minutes, specifically agenda items 7B through 7D, which includes non-substantive edits that were noted after the materials were received?
I'll move approval of all 3 as distributed.
Thank you, Mr. Rafel. Do I have a second? Ms. Dong? Okay. Any comments or questions from board members? Seeing none, any public comment here in Sacramento? Seeing none, moderator, are there any members of the public online?
This is the moderator. We have no public members on WebEx at this moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Reed, please take the vote.
Member Aguilera,
Yes.
Member Bachelor,
Yes.
Member Corrigan,
Yes.
Member Dong,
Yes.
Member Guzman,
Yes.
Member Hines,
Yes.
Member Lotta,
Yes.
Member Lynn,
Yes.
Member Rayful,
Yes.
Member Rosenbaum,
Yes.
Member Zelensky.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Thank you. We will now be moving on to agenda item 8, other business. First of which is A, our American Institute of Certified Public Accountants. And our report will be provided by Ms. Nancy Corrigan.
Thank you. The State Board Committee met virtually on April 29th, and at those meetings, we always receive information on recent Board of Examiners meetings. And at that particular one, we had kind of an update on end of exam surveys, which I mentioned in a prior meeting the AICPA is conducting, and they may be extending that to the beginning of examinations. In other words, when candidates apply, and they're interested in gathering information regarding level of education, amount of experience, they might be adding age, remembering that all of this is voluntary, of course. So it's kind of the beginning of extensive analysis in the process, and all, of course, relating back to pipeline issues. One thing they did report regarding pipeline is that all areas increased. That would be college enrollment, exam section enrollment, first-time exam takers, exam passing rates, and that dropout rates are down. So those are good things. They're thinking are linked to exam credits and extensions offered. Increasing starting salaries might be playing a good role in that as well. Increased bonuses to pass the exam might be helping that along the way as well. And I know at a future meeting, we're going to be getting some good information from AICP and NASBA related to this. At those meetings, we also gather state board hot topics. And of course, we know we're working hard on licensing pathways, but so are other jurisdictions. Many of them are just doing complete reviews to update long set regulations. We know what a process that is, especially in California. Ohio is increasing its disciplinary fines and plans to use the excess funds to educate and work on pipeline issues. So that's kind of an interesting twist. A common theme between jurisdictions is continuing education and the number of hours for license renewal, which is we've heard of that one, right? Alternative practice structure and private equity topics, very common to everyone. Concerns with independence in fact and appearance and how to regulate this area. So everybody there, everybody present, and there were a number of jurisdictions represented. That's a concern. Arkansas and Oregon are starting programs to reimburse exam candidates for fees and scholarship programs, respectively. So anything to kind of encourage exam taking and enhance the CPA population. Jurisdictions are considering early entry to exam taking, and so I shared what we're doing in California with them, and they were interested in that. Student outreach was also a common theme. They very much like hearing about California and what we have been doing lately and what we have planned, so I shared that with them. Some are reaching into high schools, one into 8th grade, training teachers about our profession while trying to understand teaching to grade and age levels. How do you teach, an 8th grader and even into lower levels? What is it you tell them to get them to comprehend about accountants, right? So exercises were suggested so that young students start to learn about finance, right? And transactions in very simplistic terms, kind of making fun games out of it. And this last program was spearheaded by a CPA firm in that particular jurisdiction in conjunction with the state board. So that's very interesting, I thought. Just so that we know and so that we can keep in mind to suggest future topics, the AICPA is offering 15 to 20-minute CPA exam podcasts, and they're offering those monthly, talking about career options, scoring exams, general exam questions. The next one is scheduled for May 19th, but they would really like to hear future, ideas for future podcasts, so very open to receiving feedback from us. That concludes my report. I turn it back over to you, President Lotta. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Corrigan. Any board member questions or comments? Ms. Guzman?
Just a comment, having been a prior school teacher a long time ago and sitting on school boards, I'm very happy to hear that these conversations are happening, and just California just recently accepted or adopted, I should say, financial literacy standards for students. They still have a couple years to implement, but I think that's a great way.
Ms. Corrigan.
Comment. I'm kind of remembering this from a year or two ago when I was on the NASBA board and we were at like a chair's breakfast or something like that. And one of the jurisdictions, and I'm thinking it was Virginia, but I'm not really sure, somebody in there was saying that, like at a very young elementary level, a school library had actually received a little book, like a children's book about accounting and being an accountant. And so I thought, hi, that's really interesting. And so I don't know if all, engineers and everybody else should be doing that too, to kind of educate them, expose them at a younger age. And so I was kind of fascinated with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional member comments or questions? Seeing none, any public comment here in Sacramento? Seeing none, moderator, are there any members of the public online?
This is the moderator. We do not have any members of the public on WebEx.
Thank you. So that moves us along to our next item, agenda item 8B, our reports associated with the National Association of State Boards of Accountancy, first of which will be our Inclusion Committee report because we have no Enforcement Resources Committee report. So I'll be turning it over to Secretary Batchelor for that report.
Thank you, President Lara. I'm part of the Inclusion Committee of NASBA, and we had a meeting and it was dated on March 17th, 2026. And our chair, Jeanette Smith, what her focus is and what we talked about was to invite more board members to be a part of NASBA. What we're trying to do is NASBA is broken up into various regions of the United States. So whatever region that you're in, you're assigned, whoever someone new comes on a board, then you're assigned to go and contact that particular member of that board in order to try to encourage them, not just to be on the inclusion committee, but also any committee that NASBA has to offer because they want more representation. So I think that's a pretty good idea because they're talking to an individual person, voice to voice in a sense, and, better than receiving an email to invite or anything like that. So that's a new strategy that we're trying to achieve in order to get more presence in NASBA. And then what the problem has is an inconsistency in the timing in which the state boards actually share the information that new members have joined different boards. So they're trying to get that in conjunction and to narrow that that deficiency in in terms of contact. And so we explored various ideas on how to do that, but within that meeting we couldn't come up with anything, and our next meeting is held for September. And the next member list is coming out, has come out, I should say, in April. And so they're going to be distributing those assignments pretty soon. I haven't received mine yet. I'm in the on the West region, so we'll see how many I'll be assigned to. And then next, we talked about the pipeline problem, in terms of candidates. And what we emphasized, they said they're trying to, they said the pipeline is very, very important, but our committee is just made a decision because it's so vast and it's so widespread that we're just going to focus in on adopting new members that come on boards into a NASBA. So we're not going to tackle the pipeline problem. So, because I even talked about it a little bit and said, is this something that we wanted to, explore further? And they say it's just too large of a ordeal, and boards are doing a pretty great job at it, especially I'm partial to say CBA is doing a fantastic job. And the next is conference participation. It's kind of waning. It's not many CPAs or members that do go to the various conferences, and they do have some very nice ones too. I haven't gone to any, but I think Nancy probably, you've gone to some, haven't you? Yes, and so they're trying to team up with NABA and Alpha, ALPHA, and they want to partner with AICPA and Becker in order to award scholarships to students to go to these various conferences. And that will get the younger people, even if for high school, more interested in serving on state as well as getting into the profession. So I thought that would be great for kids to be able to experience that. And then we talked about some engagement ideas, and the committee discussed potentially developing a video series featuring accounting students and CPAs together talking and highlighting pathways to involvement, not just getting into the profession, but also going as far as being on state boards like we are, as well as getting involved in NASBA. And I think that would be excellent because there's a lot of young people have great leadership potential, and that should be presented. And I think that'd be a great idea. And that's the end of my report. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer. And that's all I have. And I'll hand it back to you, President Lara.
Thank you, Ms. Batchelor. Are there any board member questions or comments on the presentation? Seeing none, any public comment here in Sacramento? Seeing none, moderator, are there any members of the public online?
This is the moderator. We have no public members on WebEx at this time.
Okay, thank you. We will be moving on. We have no item 8BC, so we'll be moving on to item D, which is my report on the Standards Setting and Professional Trends Advisory Committee. So we met last on April 2nd, 2026. We had a variety of topics at this particular meeting. Some of the main ones would be the PE task force update, which is always a topic at this meeting, at this current juncture. And mainly we talked about where NASBA was in terms of their response to the PEAK APS exposure draft, and PEAK stands for Professional Ethics Executive Committee for our non-professional members. And we talked about what their concerns were. In NASBA's response, which they did submit April 21st, some of the concerns that they raised were the complexity of the exposure draft and the challenge that that presents to regulatory oversight, that it was more focus of form over substance, and they wanted to make sure that independence in appearance was adequately addressed. Thirdly, the authority given to non-attest entities board to determine the compensation of the attest partners was a concern, and they wanted there to be some type of continuous monitoring of relationships between firms and APS structures rather than monitoring them on a reason to believe type of basis. So those were some of the things that we discussed that they were planning to include in that response to the exposure draft. NASBA also submitted a response to the Department of Education proposed rule on the federal student loan program. They called for the legislature to explicitly clarify the loan limit purposes and kind of carve out accounting specifically in some particular type of ways, just to make sure that whatever these new regulations are, that they don't diminish accounting as a licensed profession. So that's something you can find as well that NASBA has already submitted. But another item was these two international standard setters. Their names are quite long. So one is the IESBA, which is the International Ethics Standards Board for Accountants, and the IAASB, which is the International Auditing Assurance Standards Board. They sent out a stakeholder survey to NASBA and other stakeholders as well to get our feedback on what specific matters are important to us as they develop their strategic plans for the 2028 to 2031 year. Some of the things they had listed some topics and asked us to rank the priority of these topics, and we did that in the committee. So our top priority was evolving business structure and models of accounting firms, which is the alternative practice structure topic that we all know is very important. And next was digital transformation. The members felt that this should be a high priority for NASBA to address, definitely AI specifically, digital assets, and the audit considerations that come with that. Next, they ranked regulatory landscape as a high priority, and that we should try to stay neutral and keep politics out of that discussion as much as possible. And then we had a sustainability information category, which the committee members felt was the lowest priority. And that seemed to be the consensus nationally for the US accounting leaders as well. That's not a high priority with all the other big topics going on. And then NASBA always suggests that there's greater diversity in their stakeholder group when these surveys go out. A suggested topic that came up from a committee member was to continue to look at the evolution of the education system as it pertains to accounting with all the new shifts in society and AI and just the cultural shift of people maybe not attending colleges as often as was in the past and just different things like that. Next, we had a topic regarding disruptive and potentially disruptive trends. This is kind of a topic that at the end, anyone can bring up something that they see to be of interest. And then they also had some topics they threw out there as well. So commoditization of the SOC 2 audit. They talked about getting complaints from non-authorized people trying to issue SOC 2 reports or SOC 1 reports. Some examples they gave were like some websites like Fiverr might have someone offering these types of audit reports for very low costs, like $300 and like 24, 48-hour turnaround, really abnormal things than we would normally see in our industry. And this is a growing problem that they've been looking into. So they kind of were soliciting our feedback if that's something we've seen in our jurisdictions. Some of the other states did speak out about that. So I found that to be interesting. Next, the SEC, there was a discussion about SEC potentially moving to mid-year reporting. So that's every 6 months rather than the current quarterly like 10Q reporting. I don't think that's very far down the line yet, but it's just initial conversation that's being had. The committee members were very concerned about that and were not in favor of that potential conversation. So that was interesting to see as well. And let's see, we covered quite a lot. Some other topics, these are topics that committee members just raised at the end of the meeting. They were talking about succession and contingency planning for sole practitioners, and Maryland specifically said that they do some education around this to protect their consumers in the case that a sole practitioner passes away unexpectedly and maybe they don't have liability insurance or they haven't had a succession planning in place. So I guess this is an issue that's been cropping up for some states where these sole proprietors are not thinking ahead, and so their consumers are kind of left in a disadvantageous spot, not sure like what to do next or how to get records or whatever the various issues can be in terms of access once something like that happens. So I found that to be interesting, and I didn't know if we do any type of education around that. So I'd be interested to hear what staff has to say about that. And let's see. Yeah, I think that concludes my presentation. We covered a lot. So yeah, happy to answer any questions that members may have. Any board member comments or questions? Great, because I really didn't want to go into detail on those topics. Thank you for having mercy on me. Any comments from the public here in Sacramento? Okay, seeing none. Since we have no members of the public online, I think that concludes that item. And next, we'll move to E, which is our report of the 2026 Annual Conference for Executive Directors and Board Staff, and the Annual Conference for Board of Accountancy Legal Counsel, and that'll be presented by Carrie O'Connor, our Enforcement Chief.
Thank you, President Lotta. Mr. Franzella and I had the opportunity to attend NASBA's 44th Annual Conference for Executive Directors and 31st Annual Conference for Legal Counsel. The meeting was held March 24th through 26th in Austin, Texas. The full agenda was provided in your materials, but Mr. Franzella and I wanted to highlight some important topics that were discussed. One of the main topics discussed during the conference was alternative practice structures and private equity. There were 2 items. NASBA staff and chair of its ethics committee provided an overview of the AICPA Professional Ethics Executive Committee's exposure draft on the proposed changes to the Code of Professional Conduct. And members will recall the CBA discussed the exposure draft at its last meeting. In addition to the overview, NASBA's PE task force had a panel discussion regarding its work and provided a high-level overview of comments received as part of its white paper. Mr. Franzella participated on the panel, and the panel noted that it hoped to have some next steps and possible recommendations to share at the 2 regional meetings coming up in June. NASBA also has asked that Mr. Franzella be a part of the panel for the Western Regional at the end of June. The AICPA provided some information on upcoming changes to its enforcement process. There were considerable questions raised regarding this topic and how it may impact boards of accountancy receiving information regarding ethics violations and accounting and auditing investigations. And Mr. Franzella is monitoring this topic. And if members would like increased information on this particular topic, he'd be happy to provide either through a future EO report or CBA agenda item. One other item I'd like to highlight was the joint AICPA NASBA CPE task force, which provided an update on its work. This task force is looking at more in-depth changes to continuing education, including hours. This was a fairly short presentation, but it looks like the task force is hoping to have findings and framework later this year. I will now turn it over to President Lotta, and I'm happy to try to answer any questions members may have.
Thank you, Ms. O'Connor. Any questions or comments from board members? Mr. Rafel?
I'm not sure how to phrase the question, but was there what just in like 25 words or less, what was your sense of how other states reacted to the proposal to have equity firms buy into CPA firms, hedge funds buy in, CPA firms?
Unfortunately, I was not at that portion of the meeting. I was in the legal conference and that wasn't discussed, but I can have Mr.
I'm just curious.
Yeah, I wasn't present for that. Apologies.
I can add, I was watching the presentation. It was more delivery. There wasn't a ton of feedback that I recall at that particular time. And so I think since they were collecting some of the responses from the boards, which I think were due April 1st, if I recall correctly. So there might be more information forthcoming.
Any additional comments or questions from members? Seeing none, any public comment here in Sacramento? Seeing none, since there are no members of the public online, that concludes that item. Thank you, Ms. O'Connor. And we will now be moving on to agenda item 9, report on the Committee on Professional Conduct, Enforcement Program Oversight Committee, and the Legislative Committee, which we did not have today. And I will move that over to Vice President Aguilera.
Thank you, President Lotta. This morning's CBC meeting featured robust discussion on the agenda items, and I will start with CPC item 3, which was discussion and possible action regarding the modernization of continuing education requirements. Ms. Center provided an update on the CE modernization project and a brief project timeline. The CE work group is actively reviewing draft regulatory text. Quite a thick document, I might say. Thank you, Ms. Center. And providing feedback to staff. The draft regulatory language is currently scheduled to be brought to the CBC and CBA in September with an estimated effective date in fall of 2027. As the regulatory package moves into its review phase, staff will transition to the next phases of the project, including work related to potential updates to the Business and Professions Code through the sunset review process. The earliest possible implementation date for the legislative and regulatory changes resulting from the sunset review is January of 2029. Ms. Center shared that staff have already started holding focus group meetings and gathering insights from stakeholders, which will assist in providing a basis for both the statutory and regulatory changes. There's no action requested on this item. Instead, the CPC welcomes feedback from the CBA on the CE modernization project. Any here now? Feedback from CE modernization? Continuing on, the next agenda item discussed was CPC item 4, which was an update on implementation activities for Assembly Bill 1175. Ms. Pierce gave an update on staff's work to implement the enhanced licensure provisions of AB 1175, which will become effective on January 1, 2027. There are 3 key areas staff have been working on, including the rulemaking process, which is quite extensive, the degree and certification recognition, and statewide outreach. For the rulemaking process, the regulations have been formally noticed, starting the 45-day public comment period, which will conclude on June 22nd. The board will review the comments received, proposed responses, along with any recommended modifications to the regulations at our next meeting in July. In the area of degree and certification recognition, Ms. Pierce shared that staff is working with DCA to develop an online submission portal that will allow educational institutions to apply for recognition electronically. A pilot version of this system is anticipated by summer of 2026, with the intent to accept applications following approval of the regulations. The last key area discussed was outreach. Ms. Pierce provided an overview of the extensive outreach activities that have occurred as part of implementing AB 1175, including in-person and virtual events, website updates, frequently asked questions, infographics, and social media, and however you reached my niece. That was great. Yes. The next phase of outreach will include a focus on CPA firms and employers. The CBA will host upcoming webinars to help hiring managers and firm personnel understand the new licensure requirements. The first webinar is anticipated for early July. There will also be expanded resources for academia to guide them through the degree and certificate recognition process and ensure they have the information they need to be a resource for their students. There's no action requested on this item. Instead, the CPC welcomes any feedback from the CBA on the implementation activities for AB 1175. That concludes my report. I'll turn it back to President Lada.
Thank you, Vice President Aguilera. Are there any comments or questions from the board members on these items? Ms. Hines.
I feel like we should do whatever we can to help Vice President Aguilera's niece get her license so that maybe he can sign her license certificate while he's in leadership.
It's already happening. Her application took a while, and upon follow-up, it went out that day anyway. The reason why it took a while is because she had some of her education in under her maiden name and some under her married name. So staff is all over it.
Any other member comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, any public comment here in Sacramento on this item? Seeing none, we will be moving on, since there's no members of the public online, to agenda item 9B, report of the Enforcement Program Oversight Committee, and I will pass it over to Ms. Hines.
Thank you, President Lada. During today's EPOC meeting, members discussed EPOC agenda items 3 and 4. In item 3, staff presented an overview of the role and responsibilities of the Enforcement Advisory Committee, or EAC, which acts in an advisory capacity to the enforcement program by participating in investigative hearings, or IHs, along with enforcement staff and assigned counsel, and reporting its findings to the executive officer, reviewing open investigations upon request by enforcement staff and providing technical assistance to investigators, reviewing closed investigations and reporting its findings and recommendations to the executive officer, making recommendations and forwarding reports to the CBA for action on any matter on which it is authorized to act. The overview highlighted key EAC processes such as IHs and open or closed investigation reviews, as well as other committee actions that members may be involved in, such as aiding CBA staff in providing feedback regarding legislation, offering guidance on the day-to-day application of CPA practice, contributing technical expertise, and serving on CBA task forces. In item 4, staff presented an overview of the California Board of Accountancy's Expert Consultant Program. This overview highlighted that the enforcement program relies on technical, internal, investigative certified public accountants, or ICPAs, and non-technical enforcement analysts to complete investigative work. However, since at least 2018, the CBA has experienced challenges filling the ICPA positions. Despite extensive recruitment efforts, the CBA has been unable to attract qualified candidates to fill the positions, and therefore has established that an expert consultant program was necessary to ensure the CBA can complete the complex technical investigations resulting from consumer complaints. A little bit of tongue twister, tongue tied up. Expert consultants will assist the enforcement program by reviewing an assigned investigation case and providing an expert opinion on whether violations of professional standards exist. In addition to providing detailed information on the role of the expert consultant, the overview provided information on the requirements to qualify as an expert consultant, the contractual agreement, the onboarding process, and ongoing CBA outreach efforts. While fiscal impacts cannot yet be projected due to the program's early stage, staff will continuously monitor expenditures and report information to the CBA during frequent budget reports. During the discussion, members raised several questions about the EC program, including applicant qualifications, conflict of interest considerations, and oversight of work. Additionally, members discussed the impact of losing ICPA staff, specifically the possible loss of institutional knowledge, the ongoing recruitment efforts by the CBA, and expressed their interest in reviewing the costs of the EC program once available. Staff will provide updates at future CBA meetings as the program evolves. Both items 3 and 4 were informational and no action was taken. I will turn it back to President Lotta for any additional discussion.
Thank you, Ms. Hines. Are there any member comments or questions on this item? Vice President Aguilera.
Thank you, Ms. Hines. And this is perfect for forensic accountants. This is exactly the kind of thing that Joe and I do routinely, these types of investigations with expert reports and then provide expert witness testimony. And we participate in a Cal CPA section, the forensic services section. And we did receive an email forwarding this opportunity from the State Board of Accountancy as part of the leadership group. The chair of the forensic services section sent it out. And then Mr. Fox, who was here from Cal CPA, talked to me about it. And I reminded him that they're having meetings in 2 weeks, and that would be, again, another way to advertise this, because that's the group that will be able to fill these roles.
Thank you. Any additional, Ms. Hines?
So we talked a little bit, I talked a little bit with Ms. O'Connor also about sort of the challenge of losing internal experts to be able to oversee the work of the external consultants. And so her department is going to be monitoring this to make sure that there's a balance between having both staff that have the qualifications and the expertise to be able to monitor the expert consultant program, as well as a sufficient pool of experts to be able to support the program. So the investigation. So there's like a balancing that will be occurring. And I think Ms. O'Connor is and her team are going to just keep us informed as to how this progresses. But in the meantime, it's really helpful and important that there's a resource available to fill the need, because apparently it is very dire right now, the loss of the expertise internally within the Board of Accountancy to fill these roles. So thank you for sharing that their recruitment efforts are working, and also, keeping, in mind that our responsibility will be to support their department in monitoring the efficacy of this program as well.
Thank you, Ms. Hines. Any additional member comments or questions? Okay, seeing none. Any public comment here in Sacramento? Seeing none, we'll be moving on from public comment online, since there are no members of the public online. And that also brings us to our item 10A. However, there is no presentation on this item, as the regulations were approved and will become effective on July 1st, 2026. So that brings us to our agenda item 11A, which is agenda items for future California Board of Accountancy meetings. Are there any agenda items from members? Seeing none, any public comment here in Sacramento on this item? Seeing none, and then that will conclude our meeting, since there are no members of the public online, correct? Moderator?
This is the moderator. Yes, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so at this time, we will be moving into closed session to deliberate those closed session matters. Once the closed session is complete, the CBA meeting will adjourn. Thank you.